Our world is an incredibly diverse place. Over its 197 million square miles exist an estimated 8.7 million species. Humans alone number over 7 billion people, hailing from almost 200 countries, innumerable cultures, and a vast array of climates and habitats. So, when studying the biology of our planet, it would be counterintuitive to have it studied by only one type of person. For science to progress, it is imperative that it be studied by a variety of different people that bring with them a vast amount of diverse experience and knowledge. And it is important to not only support the broadening of participation in the sciences, but to understand why broadening participation is essential, and not only to underrepresented minorities, but to the advancement of science and increase greater benefits to society as a whole. Agencies that fund scientific research, such as the National Science Foundation, understand this and are dedicated to increasing the retention and success of underrepresented minorities.
My name is John Wingfield. I'm the Assistant Director for the Biological Sciences at the National Science Foundation. We are very committed to broadening participation and inclusion of all people in science, education and outreach, regardless of gender, their ethnic background and religious persuasion and so forth. The reasons for this is that we feel that the advancement of science, education and outreach, the advancement of science for our own welfare is enriched much more by having a broad inclusion of everybody in the sciences and beyond.
Broad inclusion is indeed important for enhancing scientific discoveries and their welfare applications. Here are stories from 3 professors from the University of California at Berkeley on how their diverse backgrounds and experiences have enriched their scientific programs, and why they feel we should continue to strive for broadening participation in the sciences.
My name is Carlos Bustamante. I'm a professor of physics, molecular and cell biology, and chemistry at the University of California, Berkeley. I'm a biophysicist, and we study how the cell uses molecular machines to carry out these functions, and we study those molecular machines. Having been born in South America, I had the experience of developing and being resourceful about inventing and building our own toys, and that really, I think, ultimately was probably beneficial for my career as a scientist. Many years later, when I was already here at Berkeley, we did an experiment where we pulled a single molecule of DNA and we had a little bead on the side, and since when you pull a DNA, the molecule unwinds, you could actually see the rotation of the bead as the molecule unwound, and that very much resembled a toy which we actually built and played with when I was a kid in Latin America. We call that a run run in Peru, and because it's the sound it produces when you actually pull the thing and you make the cap go one direction and then the opposite direction. Well, it turns out that actually we ended up doing an experiment exactly like that, because we could actually pull the DNA and the bead will go rotate in one direction as the DNA unwound, and then if we actually relax the DNA, then the bead will rotate in the opposite direction as the DNA rewound, and we did this at the level of a single molecule. And so it is interesting to think that some of these early experiences in life may actually remain in the back of a person's mind, and we may end up actually sort of reproducing them at the molecular level, at the single molecule level, which is what we did.
My name is Tyrone Hayes. I'm a developmental endocrinologist. I'm interested in the role that hormones play in development across animals. I'm interested in amphibians primarily, but we also do some work on breast cancer, and I'm interested in the role of hormones in breast cancer. There are a number of reasons why diversity and increasing diversity in the sciences are important. In particular, for me, it strikes me that people research what they're interested in. They research things that have been naturally been a part of their lives. And in particular, my research right now, I'm interested in things like environmental justice and environmental racism. So for example, why is it that minorities are more likely to die from cancer and a number of other diseases relative to Caucasian Americans? And there's not a lot of research in this area. Not only is there not a lot of research, there's not a lot of even materials to actually conduct the research. For example, there are no breast cancer cells available from black or Hispanic women to even start to address possible biological reasons why black and Hispanic women are more likely to die from breast cancer. So I think just by increasing the diversity of people that are conducting research, that are involved in research, will increase the topics that we research. And that's obviously very important both for society as well as for the advancement of science.
I'm Erica Bree Rosenblum. I study speciation and extinction. One of the things as women in science that we have the opportunity to do is learn a lot of really important life lessons very early on. Specifically, one of the things that's important is to realize that we need to chart our lives by our own stars rather than feeling like we need to play by what seem like unfair rules. When I was a postdoc and had my first child, I'd given a presentation at a conference and had one of my senior colleagues come up afterwards and say, "Looks like you're doing great, your career looks like it's going well, just make sure you don't have another child." And this was a real aha moment for me when I realized that what we need to be doing to broaden participation in science, and particularly to welcome the perspective that women bring to science, is that we need to be explaining and encouraging to people how professional success and personal happiness can go hand in hand and actually be self-reinforcing. And so I did have that second child, and one of the life lessons that I've learned is that the more joy and balance I have in my personal life, the more effective and successful I can be in my professional life. And so this is one important message that I think we need to be giving, is that the more honest we can be about our needs, not only as scientists but also as human beings, the more we can work together to change some of the rules that may have previously been more excluding to certain groups, and to promote more of a culture of inclusion of multiple perspectives in science.
I think in the biological sciences, the next 5 to 10 years are going to be so exciting, because I think there are so many new interfaces of biological sciences with mathematics, physics, engineering, geological sciences and so forth, issues of big data, the genomics, molecular biology techniques taken out to the environmental level. We are going to see a revolution in biological sciences that is at least of the same magnitude as the inception of molecular biology some 40, 50 years ago. So it is an excellent time for young people to get involved with science.
I think diversity is quite important in all human endeavors, and in particular in scientific research, because basically I believe that one approaches any task, any intellectual endeavor, any academic endeavor from the perspective of the culture, of one's culture. And I think that that is inseparable from the individual. And I believe that the experience of other cultures is one that is beneficial, because it provides a different perspective, a different sort of a parallax effect that allows a problem to be studied from precisely different cultural perspectives, and therefore I believe that enriches the experience and the actual scientific endeavor.
You know, I guess one of the things that's important is once we start to fix the problem, then it'll perpetuate itself. For example, I think that if we have a greater diversity of people teaching in the sciences, then we'll have a greater diversity of students who pursue the sciences. If we have a greater diversity of people working in laboratories, then we'll have a greater diversity of people who choose to go into science and who choose to address research problems that haven't been addressed. For some of us, maybe it doesn't make that big of a difference, but actually to see somebody in the classroom or giving a lecture or doing science or on television in a documentary that looks like ourselves is perhaps more likely to attract those people to go into science themselves.
So we all value diversity in science, and it seems like one of the most important things to promote diversity and make people feel like this is a life for them is to really continue working on structural change in the system so that the system can encompass lots of different people's needs and desires in their lives. I think one optimistic thing is that the system is changing and that the more different perspectives that we can bring together will continue furthering positive changes in the system. I think another optimistic and motivational thing is looking around and realizing that there are people that are very happy, both personally and professionally, and that those two aspects of their lives are really synergistic and at peace and wonderful. And so I hope that that in my role as an educator and a scientist, and as someone with a family, that I'm able to provide one example of the many different paths you can take towards professional fulfillment and personal happiness, and that those things aren't in conflict, but actually work together to make individual people happy, but also to make our scientific culture one that's more supportive of lots of different perspectives and lots of different paths through this life.
The system is changing, and many universities and agencies such as the National Science Foundation are continually seeking out ways in which to broaden and support diversity. We often approach endeavors from the perspective of our backgrounds and cultures, and because of this, problem solving is invigorated, such as a handmade Peruvian toy later reproduced at the molecular level to create a tool that unwinds DNA, or research from an amphibian endocrinology lab used to combat environmental racism. We need to work together to develop more inclusive and flexible policies to encourage a culture of multiple perspectives. By cultivating an environment of inclusion, we gain different people with different strengths and interests, which have been and will continue to be an imperative component necessary for the progression of scientific discovery.